Welcome back, college sports fans. We are now in the month of July, which means we're getting closer and closer to college football season. And what a better way to get closer and closer to the season than to talk about five college football head coaches who could potentially have a breakthrough, big breakout season, just like we've seen from guys like Kurt Signetti, for example, with Indiana this past year, among others. So I'm going to talk about five college football coaches who I think could have a big breakout season here in 2025. First is Matt Rule with Nebraska. Now, the Cornhuskers finally got back to a bowl game last year for the first time since 2016, and Matt Rule is bringing back a return quarterback in Dylan Raiola, who's oftentimes been mocked and praised for being a Patrick Mahomes look-alike. He's coming back, returning veteran experience. They have a running back coming back, and Emmett Johnson, who's got a ton of experience, a really experienced offensive line. And the defense still is not that bad, which means that Nebraska could take a major step forward offensively and still have a defense that's pretty good. And you look at their schedule, and it's not that bad. They opened the season in Kansas City, taking on Cincinnati for a neutral site game in Arrowhead. Maybe Travis Kelce will be there cheering on his alma mater in the Cincinnati Bearcats. Who knows? But regardless, that will still be a game that Nebraska is favored to win. They're currently favored by 7 points, which to me still makes this a 50-50 game. But I would expect the Cornhuskers to win that game. And then from there, you look at the schedule, and it's a ton of winnable games. They do have to go on the road against Penn State, which is very, very likely going to be a loss, as Penn State could be the best team in college football this season. Certainly going to be in the top five at least. So that's probably going to be a loss for Nebraska. They've got big potential to upset Michigan in week 4, especially since the Wolverines will have the young quarterback Bryce Underwood, who's a true freshman. He'll be coming into that raucous environment in Lincoln. And so Nebraska's got a ton of potential to beat Michigan. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that they do beat Michigan. They do get the upset there. And from that, I think that means they'll at least go 9-3 this season. I personally think they could go 10-2, but that's probably a bit high. Regardless, even if they go 9-3, that's going to be a huge year for Nebraska and a huge year for Matt Rule in his third season with the team. Next is Hugh Freeze with Auburn. Now, we've seen Hugh Freeze be a mastermind at the college football level. We've seen him do it with Ole Miss, and now he's got a really good quarterback for the first time here with the Auburn Tigers in Jackson Arnold. Now, Jackson Arnold, while he was good at times with Oklahoma and while he's got a ton of potential, he does really badly need to cut down on his turnovers. But if he can limit his turnovers, and he's got star receivers such as Cam Coleman, he's got Eric Rivers that came in from Florida International, he's got talented guys now. He's got talent himself, and in theory, should take a major step forward in Hugh Freeze's quarterback friendly offensive system. They will need to figure out the running back position. They've got a few other question marks along the team, some on the defense as well. But the schedule doesn't line up too bad. If you take a look at Auburn's schedule here, they go on the road to take on Baylor in week 1. Currently, Auburn is just 2.5-point favorites, and this should be one of the best games in week 1, Friday night on Fox. Definitely not going to want to miss that battle in Waco. Assuming Auburn wins that game, and if they are to have this monster year, they're going to need to win this game. Assuming that the Auburn Tigers win that game, their SEC schedule is really broken up into 3 parts in my eyes. They've got a really tough beginning of the SEC schedule, a really tough first 3 games. They go on the road against Jackson Arnold's former team in Oklahoma, so just that alone, they're going to turn up for that game. Then they're going to go on the road against Texas A&M. A&M looking for revenge against the Tigers because of the crazy 4 overtime loss that Texas A&M had to Auburn last year, which basically ruined the Aggies' chances of going to the college football playoff. And then the home game against Georgia And of course, Georgia is always going to be really, really tough, even though that game is at home. So that's the first three games, very, very difficult. Then the SEC schedule gets a lot more winnable. They host Missouri, they're at Arkansas, they're hosting Kentucky, and they're at Vanderbilt. And I think there's a good chance that Auburn could be favored in all four of those games. And then they got their FCS opponent in Mercer before then they take on Alabama in this third and final part, the Iron Bowl. And it's at home. And we've seen Jordan Hare magic against the Crimson Tide in the past. So I wouldn't put it past Auburn to win that nighttime game in Jordan Hare against the Crimson Tide. So if you look at that schedule, okay, they got to beat Baylor, and then they have to beat the four SEC teams that they're favored against, and then they got to win their other non-conference games. But if they do all of that, that is an 8-4 season. If you can just pull off just one upset out of those other four games I mentioned, then you're looking at a 9-3 season. Not too bad, not too bad at all. So this could be a huge, huge year for Hugh Freeze. But again, a lot of that is going to be determined on Jackson Arnold's play, how quickly he learns the system, and if he can cut down on those turnovers, which were a major problem at Oklahoma last year. The next coach that I've got, and who knows, maybe I'm jumping the gun just a little bit on this one, is Jonathan Smith at Michigan State. Jonathan Smith was a fantastic hire for the Michigan State Spartans. With what he did at his alma mater at Oregon State was truly remarkable. And the Spartans got lucky in the fact that the college football world, as we know it, completely blew up, and Oregon State ended up not being in a conference. And Jonathan Smith was like, well, I still want to be in a major conference and I still want to be able to possibly compete for a national championship. And you just can't do that at Oregon State right now. But with Michigan State, you could build them up, win the Big Ten, and then compete for a national championship. So you take a look at the Spartans. They've got Aiden Childs, who was a five-star recruit that Smith recruited at Oregon State. He took him with him to East Lansing. He had a year starting there. He's worked out a lot of the issues, and now he's coming back next season. And you take a look at Michigan State's schedule, and it's not that bad. They should win their first three games. They've also got very, very winnable home games against UCLA, a team that Jonathan Smith, of course, very familiar with, and Maryland. And I would expect the Spartans to win both of those. You win both of those games, you win your first three easy games, and now you've got 5 wins. That means you just need to pull off one upset. You just need to win one game in your other 7 games, and you're going 6-6, and you're going to a bowl game. And that would be a huge step forward for Michigan State. I think there's potential to do even better than that. All going to depend on how much better this offense gets, which the offense was not that great for Michigan State last season. But Jonathan Smith is a quarterback whisperer. He's an offensive guru. Childs has had a whole season plus with him and has had the off season to develop and become the guy that he knows that he can be. And he's got tons of talent. I think Michigan State takes a huge step forward offensively. I think there's potential for them to get one of these other Big Ten teams in a trap game, get that upset, and get to a bowl game in 2025. Up next is Mike Elko for Texas A&M. Now, another, as you're noticing a pattern here, he's returning a quarterback. He's got Marcel Reed coming back for another season. I think Marcel Reed is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the SEC heading into this season. And yes, he lost one of his key weapons to Georgia, but as I talked about in my last video that I made and uploaded to this channel, they did bring in KC Concepcion, who could have a big bounce back season with Reed throwing him the football. So they've got a ton of talent. They have a really deep running back room, which was hindered badly by injuries last season. All those guys are coming back, so they got a well balanced offense. They've still got a good defense, although there's some more question marks there than there was last season. But you look at their schedule, and there's only going to be 3 games on Texas A&M's schedule that they're going to be underdogs in. And as a result, the betting odds for the over under on their season is that they're going to is 8.5. So you're betting chances are they're probably going to go at least 8-4, but I think there's a huge amount of potential for them to go 10-2 this season with Mike Elko. They're going to be favored in their other 9 games, but the 3 games that they're going to be underdogs in are going to be on the road against Notre Dame, on the road against LSU, and on the road against Texas. And if the Texas A&M Aggies can just find some way to win just one of those 3 games, and if it's a win against one of those 2 SEC teams and they win the other 9 games on the schedule, then that means that they would only have one conference loss, which would most likely be good enough to get them into the SEC championship game, which last year, a lot of people forget, before that upset against Auburn and before that, defensive battle against Texas, the Aggies were very close to going to the SEC championship game to face off against Georgia and have a chance to go to the college football playoff. So this was a team that was very close. I think they're going to take a step forward. I think there's a strong chance that Mike Elko, in just his second season in College Station, could go 10-2. This last coach I'm going to talk about who could be in for a monster year, I may also be jumping the gun on a little bit as well, but it's just because I have the belief in this head coach and seeing what he's done in the past with other programs. But that is Greg Schiano at Rutgers. Schiano was highly sought after before he went to the Scarlet Knights by various other programs because people know what he's capable of. And you look at the schedule for this season, and Rutgers should go at minimum at least 6-6 this season in 2025. They've got 3 very easy games to start the year, and then in conference play, they've got 3 games that they should win. They have a home game against Iowa, they've got a road game against Purdue, and they've got a home game against Maryland. All 3 of those games should be victories for the Scarlet Knights. And then you look at it, okay, if they're going to have a winning season, that just means they got to upset somebody else. They've got a road game against Washington. They absolutely could win. They beat the Huskies in a close thriller last year. Washington will be looking for revenge, though. Not going to be super easy, but it is doable. And then they've got a game against Minnesota. That's the quarterback Ethan Kaliakmanis's former team. And again, he's now spent an entire year in Schiano's system, so another similar parallel to all these other coaches that I just talked about, getting quarterbacks that have spent at least a year within their system, with one exception in this video being Hugh Freeze, but that's besides the point. Kaliakmanis comes back. Once again, they've rebuilt other key pieces. The big question mark is running back. Who's going to replace Kyle Monungai? But they can find somebody to replace him to at least get decent production. Then they could have a good year offensively. They could take a step forward there. And the defense under Schiano is always very good. So it's very possible that the Scarlet Knights could go 8-4, but should at least go 6-6. And for Rutgers standards, if they do go 8-4, that would be a monster season. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching another video here on the College Sports Superfan. Be sure to leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what topics I should do next. Leave a like if you liked this video, and be sure to subscribe for some future content. We are now in the month of July, so we're getting closer and closer to college football and college volleyball season for that matter. So stay tuned for some more content coming up as we get closer to the fall sports season here on the College Sports Superfan.